On today's Maker Mashup, we're going to be creating lithophanes as holiday ornaments and gifts. So it's really surprising that when I go to maker fairs and other places, how many people have not seen lithophanes before in 3D printing. And if you've never seen one, they are really impressive for showing someone what a 3D printer can do in a non-traditional sense. Now, what I mean by non-traditional is that most people have seen people 3D print models, 3D print different parts, but what most people don't see are lithophanes, and it's really a unique use. The way that lithophanes work is they have varying levels of plastic that are built up to create either a light or a dark area, and that's represented within the image itself. So what happens is that you can take a color photo and convert it into a 3D print and then put some sort of border. In this case, I made a dog ornament and I've got my pet Maggie right here. So on today's video, what we're going to be covering is how to make an ornament just like this. And you'll also see some other ways that you can use lithophanes to create holiday gifts for friends and family this season. So let's get to work. So today we're going to be talking about lithophanes, and if you've never made lithophanes before, what a lithophane is a 3D print that layers different levels of plastic that creates shades of light and dark. Now there's different ways to make lithophanes, and with these lithophanes here at lithophanemaker.com, there's a variety of different ones. There's a Christmas tree one that they just recently came out with. There's a way to create a lamp. They've got boxes on here, night lights. This is just one site that allows you to make these lithophanes. There's another one that is called 3D Printing Rocks. And this also has tools on here that allow you to do lithophanes and make them in various shapes and sizes. They both have advantages to each one of these sites. We're going to be using the Lithophane Maker website today. So we're going to skip over the Christmas tree because that one's already done. And I'm going to show you today how you can make lithophanes in any type of ornament shape that you want. And that's what we're going to be working on right here. So we're going to start with the circular lithophane maker, and you can use the same type of process to do a square one if you wanted to go down this route. It's a pretty simple process. We're going to walk through it. So what I did for the example that I showed earlier, which is the dog paw, was we start with a circular lithophane maker. Now this is pretty straightforward, but I'm going to walk through a few of these options. The first thing we're going to need is our photo. So we're going to choose our photo, and I've got a folder here of which I've already started to work on this demo here. And we're just going to select that dog photo there of Maggie, who is my Shih Tzu. And we're going to leave this as a positive, so it'll look correctly as a lithophane with light behind it. And there's an option here for hoop or no hoop. Now what the hoop is this piece here where you could put a piece of string or an ornament hook. We're going to say no hoop. And we're going to set our lithophane resolution. Now what I like to do, it creates slightly larger files, but I think the quality looks considerably better, is we're going to set this to the same amount as our layer height. So in this particular case, I'm going to use a 0.15 layer height. And the radius for this is the distance from the center to the edge. So a 25 millimeter radius means that edge to edge, it's going to be a 50 millimeter wide lithophane. Now, that's a pretty sizable ornament, and the one that I have is pretty large, but I think they look nicer when they're a little bit larger, and I think you get more detail in the photo. So we're going to leave this at the 25. The frame is this outer ring. Now, this outer ring is important, so you have a consistent part of a lithophane when you're going to be inserting this into the ornament that we're going to be creating here in just a moment. So I don't think it needs to be very thick. I set mine to just 2 millimeters wide. So you'll have more picture, less border. So the frame height here is the amount of height of the frame. As you can see here, that's the outer rim. So basically what you have is a rim around the lithophane, and this does not need to be as high. So what I do is I set this to the maximum height of our lithophane ornament. Now we're going to be doing this as a much smaller ornament, so we can set this at about 5 millimeters, which is a good number. And then the max thickness and the min thickness, we can leave this. This is just how thick and how detailed our lithophane is going to be. So the last thing we need to do is select our circle. Now this is going to be the crop region, and all that we need to do here is get this circle that you see. It's a little faint here, but that circle is what we're going to be cutting out our lithophane out of. I like to use these little arrows, and I just go in here and adjust this. So we're going to move this up a bunch. I want to get the top of Maggie's head here. And then we're going to move that over to the left a little bit. And that gives us a pretty good image of her face. So then the next thing we're going to do is go and run this. The estimated run time is how long it's going to take, and that's just 1 second. And then our file size is going to be about 20 megabytes. So the last thing we need to do is put our email address in here and then click Create STL. So once it's ready, it will pop up and allow us to download this. So we're going to call this Okay, so we've got this created. Now we're going to open this and show it in the folder. And then we're going to unzip everything in here. So you just select Extract All. And then we're going to extract all the files. So once these are done, you can close both of these windows. And our next step now is going to be to find a shape. Now you can use any sort of shape that you want. I've already selected a holiday bell, and what's nice about this is that you can see here this one is completely opaque. So when you have one that's completely opaque, you can easily use this in Tinkercad, which is going to be our next step, and that solid will work really well. There are other ones that look more like outlines. They don't work as well. There are quite a number of these on Pixabay. There are free downloads and there's no attribution required. So this is a really good option for some legal images. Basically, we're going to download a vector graphic. Now I've already downloaded this and unzipped this, so that we're going to go on to the next step, but all you want to do is download an SVG and make sure it's an SVG file, because the SVGs are the scalable vector graphics. A PNG will not work, or JPEG or any other type, so it's got to be a scalable vector graphic. Okay, so once you've got your image, then we're going to go into Tinkercad. And with Tinkercad, I've already got a blank canvas on here, and we're all set up, and I've named it Ornament Demo. And the first step that we're going to do is to import our SVG image. So you just go ahead and click Import, and then we're going to import the file from the disk that we just uploaded, and that is the bell here. Now, you can leave the scale at 100%, or you can change this. Now, we know already from looking at our design here that the total width is going to be the 25 plus the 2 on each side. So this becomes 50, and then this becomes 4. So we're going to have a 54 millimeter wide design. So when we look at the scale here, we can go ahead and either adjust this in Tinkercad, or you can adjust it here. You can make this something like 140%, and then that gives us a much larger ornament. That takes just a second to import. You can adjust the size in here as well by holding down the Shift key, and then you can adjust it any size that you want. So that's another option as well, and we'll go through that when we cut the hole out for our lithophane. So the first step that we need to do is to reduce the size. Now, if you remember on this page here, we made the frame height 5 millimeters. So we only need to make sure that this is 5 millimeters tall. So we're going to shrink this down to about 5 millimeters. All right, now our next step is to import the 3D file or the STL from our lithophane that we created. So now we're going to import this, and we're going to import this at 100% scale. Again, you can shrink this down here, but what we're going to do is just leave this at 100% for this demo. You can make these really any size that you want, but the default will leave as much resolution as possible. Now this takes a little bit to import and for Tinkercad to process. So this would be a good time for you to click that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my upcoming projects. We're going to be working on a lot of new things in the coming year. So click subscribe and click that bell so you get notified anytime that we have a new video. Okay, so it took Tinkercad about 2 minutes to upload the file and get it imported. So now that we have that imported, we're going to just move this over a hair and select our lithophane. Now, the first thing we want to do is, this is right now set for the same height. What we want to do is increase the height on the lithophane, and we're going to also mark this as a hole. Now, what we want to do is when you increase the size, you need to make sure that you can see all the way through, and then what that's going to do is create a hole that's exactly the same size as the lithophane that we're going to print. So these are going to be 2 separate prints. And what we're going to do is this is probably a really good spot for the lithophane and the bell, but we want to make sure that we have our horizontal set correctly, and it's right in the middle. So we're going to select both of those. And then what we're going to do is click this little align button here, and we're going to tell Tinkercad to put this in the middle. So it's in the exact middle now of the bell horizontally. Now we like it where it is in the vertical of the bell, so we're going to leave that there. And now what we're going to go ahead and do is once again select both of these, and then because this is set for hole, we're going to hit the group button here. And what Tinkercad's going to do is it's going to group that together and put a hole into this ornament. Now this takes a minute for it to process. So in 1 minute here, we'll move on to our next step. Okay, so it took Tinkercad about 15-20 seconds to go ahead and put that hole in there. But you can see now we have a gaping hole in the middle of our ornament. Now the idea here is that we're going to print this in one color, and then we're going to print our lithophane in white. So that way you can see that we get that nice holiday bell, and we're going to print the bell in red, and then what we're going to do is print our lithophane out in white. So now that we have this done, we need one final step, and that's just to put a hole in here for the ornament hook. Now, you can do this a couple of different ways. One would be to use the tube option in here, and we can go ahead and shrink down this tube so it looks like a small ring. Now, that's one way to do it. If you don't want to do it that way and you just want to punch a hole in it, then we can go ahead and use a cylinder, and we can shrink that down to size. And we can also make sure that we align it correctly. And then once we've got that, we can just put that in there as well. Remember, if you want to center it horizontally, you can use that align feature, and it puts it right in the center. Now, all you have to do to put the hole in is select that, choose hole, and then select the two again, and then just do group. So there we go. We now have a hole in our bell. It'll take Tinkercad just a second to process it. Now the reason why it takes Tinkercad a little bit more time to process this is because we had that 20 megabyte file. So we're working their servers pretty hard with this larger STL file because Tinkercad remembers all of this in a history. So if I actually undid this and then undid this, it would bring back our original image. So it's a lot of data for Tinkercad to manage. You could optionally also put the hole in first and then do the larger part of this, so you only have to have Tinkercad do this work one time. So another way to do it. So now that we've got the hole in there, we're ready to export this. So I'm going to change the color here just because that is the ugliest gray color I've ever seen, or tan color. So that's what our bell is going to look like 3D printed. So now we can just go ahead and export this, and we're going to export our STL. And we're going to select our ornaments directory again, same place we're saving everything else. And we're going to save our ornament demo. So now at this point we have our outer ring and we've got our lithophane selected. So now it's time to do some 3D printing. So I have Cura loaded up and we've got a couple of options for printing our lithophane here. So we're going to open a lithophane, and this is the one that we're going to use here. This is the same one we've been using. Okay, so I've got our model loaded into Cura here, and you can see here that it's currently set up to print this flat like this. Now, for a lower quality lithophane, you can go ahead and use it just like this. I've printed it like this. It comes out just fine. However, if you want to get more detail in it, you can spend a little bit more time and rotate your lithophane onto its end. Now, of course, when you do this, you're going to need to make sure that you have supports enabled. Now, I find that most of the time you don't need the supports over the face area here or over the actual surface. Most of the time that bridges just fine with standard cooling on 3D printers, but your 3D printer may require supports. But overall, I find that this generally is not an issue. So if we look here, what I've done is a couple of support settings. Of course, in here I've generated supports, and I've told Cura that the overhang angle is 0. If you revert back to the original value, you'll see here that Cura will generate supports only here on the bottom because that overhang angle is not over 50%. Now, you can use the default setting, of course, but my concern is that once this gets higher up, you're not going to have a lot of support here. So if your 3D printer at any point grabs a piece of the model moving across here, you're just going to rip this off. So it's good to have this at the lowest value possible, which in this case is 0. Now, the other settings I've changed in here is to just slightly increase the support density. 15% is the Cura default here, but I've got that set at 20. So those are good options to have in here. Now, the other thing you want to make sure of is that you're currently setting this for a brim. The brim's important to make sure that we have a good surface area for this to attach to. So as you can see here now, we've got more of the base already lined up, and Cura will come in here and use these supports. And these break off pretty easily, and then if there's any support left over, we can just sand this edge down pretty easily. So that is all we have to do with the lithophane to go ahead and print it this way, and it will give you a higher resolution than if you were printing this flat on here, but either way works well. So with that, let's go ahead and print this out. So we're just going to start by breaking off the supports here. And then we're going to just use our file to finish up the rest of this. Okay, so I've got this piece done and this piece. They've both been sanded pretty well, and they nearly fit. Now, I printed these on 2 different printers, and I can keep sanding a little bit, but these are very close to fitting. You probably can't see it that well on the camera, but they're really, really close. So I'm going to show you another trick that you can do. Now, I can keep sanding this. However, The other thing you can do with these is get your handy dandy heat gun. So that's what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna soften this plastic up a little bit. And then once I soften this up, I'm gonna go ahead and push in the lithophane into it. And there we go, a little bit of pressure, and now we've got our ornament in place here, and it's securely in place. Now, the heat gun method here is only one way to do this. I personally recommend that you adjust the horizontal expansion in your Cura settings to get a better fit right on the start. But if you've already printed one, the heat gun will work. The last part on this is just simply to put a little ornament hook on it, and you're good to go. Okay, so now we've got a couple of different ornaments that we've put together, hanging these on our tree. You can use any color filament that you want for the borders. White is the preferred filament for the lithophanes itself. Now I want to show one more thing before we end our video today, and that is going to be these sort of lithophanes that are rectangular. It looks rectangular, but they're actually curved. Now these print really well on your 3D printer, and the 3DP Rocks site will allow you to make these. There's stands available for them, and what you can do is backlight a lot of these with Tealights. So there's a lot of different containers on Thingiverse where you slide these lithophanes like this in, and you can go ahead and backlight them with Tealights or even craft lights. And again, I've linked all that in the description. So with a little bit of creativity, you can make some really amazing gifts for people this year and give them away, show off your 3D printer, and everyone will hang them on the tree and have them for years to come. So now you should have some really good ideas on how you can use lithophanes and how to use them as gifts and give them to friends and family this holiday season. So if you like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And I would really love to hear in the comments how you plan to use this video to make your own lithophanes as gifts for friends and family. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.